ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति सुपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णकरुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेशा गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते सप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये पञ्चकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते राधानाथ स्वामी विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन् इति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्। ओम तत्सत्। Hare Krishna. So, I'd like to welcome everyone who has joined. I think Mayurji, you have also joined today, so welcome. Thank you for connecting, and welcome to all the rest as well. So, we are currently on the second chapter. Actually, we intended to complete the second chapter last week, but somehow few verses still remain. So we completed up to verse 65, and that is the almost the conclusion of the section where Lord Krishna is answering Arjuna's question on Sthita Prajnasya ka bhasha samadhistasya Keshava Sthitadhi kim prabhasheta kim asita vrajeta kim. Oh Krishna, please tell me. You're talking about this self-realized person. You're talking about this soul. The word self-realized is, in one sense, almost synonymous with a person who has a perfectly stable and happy consciousness. Sthita prajna. Prajna means consciousness. Sthita means fixed. Fixed in a state of bliss, which is unaffected or undisturbed by the tribulations of this world. So Arjuna is very curious, and Krishna puts in a fair amount of effort to try to explain to Arjun what this Sthita Prajna is about. How does he talk? How does he walk? So Krishna explains to Arjun by explaining to him that essentially Arjuna, the primary characteristic of a person who's in fixed consciousness is seen based on how he responds to the happy and sad events of this world. How does he respond when there are temptations in this world? And he essentially, the bottom line that Krishna mentions to Arjuna is that such a person is not hankering after the pleasures of this world. Why? Because he understands the temporary nature of these happiness, and because of that, he doesn't want to risk his steadiness of consciousness by trying to anchor his mind on these unsteady things which are temporary and ephemeral. Rather, such a wise soul anchors his consciousness on the unchangeable spiritual platform by connecting himself to the Lord through devotion. And because that state is essentially unaffected by what happens around, one can maintain that connection all through proper practice, of course. But once one is able to maintain that, one can essentially remain in a state of consciousness where one is practically unaffected. It's like when you go above the clouds. If some place that is raining heavily, yeah, so the people in that place, sometimes they will have rain, sometimes they will not have rain. But if you rise and go above the clouds, then whether there is rain or no rain, for you there is no rain. Why? Because the rain is only below the clouds. You are already above the clouds. Yes. So Krishna is encouraging Arjun, work towards elevating your consciousness in such a state. Like I was sharing the other day, I think it was in our group only, this beautiful story about, as a WhatsApp forward, no credits to myself, but it was a beautiful story about how the eagle who is pestered by the crow, he flies so high that the crows cannot reach him. Yeah, I'm just summarizing. There are a few beautiful points there. So similarly, the yogi who is wise and who has studied and understood the nature of this world comes to the conclusion that the formula for happiness in this world is not simply through achievement and success. There's nothing inherently wrong in achievement and success. We are not against achievement and success, but when the consciousness is anchored on the outcomes, then one essentially subjects oneself to the various changes that are continuously going on in this world. And no position, no attainment, no success, no name, no winning remains permanent in this world. So those who are wise, and there are some shlokas to that effect, the subsequent chapters, where Krishna essentially tells Arjun that those who are wise, they do not anchor their consciousness on these temporary things. Because net, the bottom line, there's a top line and there's a bottom line. We often get tempted by the top line only. Top line means what we get, the benefit. But we have to look at the bottom line, not the top line only. Why? Because after what we get, you have to minus it with the expenses. Yes, that's what we do in business, right? What do we do in business? Revenue minus expenses. I'm just giving a very simplistic view. What you get by selling minus the cost of selling. And of course, all the cost of manufacturing, so all kinds of expenses. And that gives you your bottom line. Because living entities are so focused on the top line of what they are getting, some sensory pleasure, some mental pleasure, some intellectual pleasure, they forget to see that there are a lot of minuses which are in the form of so many encumbrances in the process of getting that little benefit. Along with that, the main encumbrances of birth, old age, disease, and death, and being trapped in the cycle of birth and death. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. When one settles that account and sees what is the bottom line, it is always in the negative and deep in red. So a person who is wise, he understands, let me not invest and be attached in that which is continuously changing, which by its very nature is unstable and temporary. So he works on elevating his consciousness to bring it and anchor it in a plane of stable happiness. And that is what coming to Sthita Prajna is all about. So Krishna describes it very beautifully. There are many beautiful purports, so please read through it. And then Krishna says in verse 65, which we concluded the last week, Krishna says that once a person reaches this state, Arjun, he's practically become free from the suffering of this world. He's in such a state of happiness that all these external tribulations, they don't impact him. The intelligence remains fixed. Why the intelligence of a person who's materialistic is not fixed? Because he's continuously going through Sankalpa Vikalpa. Sankalpa Vikalpa. Sankalpa means, oh, maybe I want this. Vikalpa means, no, maybe not this. This is not giving me so much happiness. Maybe this. Oh, I thought I'll be happy by marrying this girl. Oh, but after marriage, I realized she was not so great after all. Maybe I should have married my other girlfriend, not this one. Divorces the first one, marries the second one, only to realize, oh, the first one was probably better. But maybe now I should try the third one. Sankalpa Vikalpa. And one goes on in various ways, across various things, tries and tries and tries. Sankalpa Vikalpa. He cannot have a fixed intelligence because every time he thinks, maybe, oh, I tried here, but probably happiness is not enough here. If I get this, then I can be happy. If not this, then maybe I get this, then I can be happy. And this perpetually goes on endlessly. That's why a materialistic person cannot have a fixed intelligence. So Krishna is saying a person who is fixed spiritually is very clear. I have to connect to the source of all happiness. I have to connect to Ram, the reservoir of happiness. I have to connect to Krishna, the all-attractive Supreme Person. Then I will get a steady and unending supply of spiritual pleasure. Ramante yogino nante satyananda chidatmani iti rama padena so parabrahma abhidhiyate. So Krishna then goes on to tell Arjun, Arjun, please understand that what I'm telling you is not just an option. It is not that, this is some buffet that if you like palak paneer, you can eat palak paneer. If you don't like, you can go and eat kadai, vegetables. I like this, you like this. No. If you actually want steady happiness, steady pleasure, and to be unaffected by misery, there is actually no other way. Nasti buddhir ayuktasya, nacha ayuktasya bhavana, nacha bhavayatah shantir ashantasya kutah sukham. Arjun, if a person is not connected to me, ayukta means not connected, which means he is not a yogi, which means one who's not endeavoring in the way that I have just explained. He cannot have a fixed intelligence. He will go on with this sankalpa vikalpa throughout the material world. And because his mind will always be distracted like this, he will never have a steady mind. And if you don't have a steady and peaceful mind, if you don't have a steady mind, that means you don't have peace. It's practically synonymous because peace means tranquility. It's like a water which has no ripples. And if you do not have peace, what is the chance of happiness? Ashantasya kuto sukham, a very deep and profound point Krishna mentions. In this world, people chase for pleasure. They don't chase for peace. They think peace is idle. What is the need for peace? They don't want to chase for peace, but they don't understand if you're not peaceful, you cannot actually be happy. Do you agree? If you're not peaceful, you cannot actually be happy. True or not true?
True.
Yes. Minalji knows. Yes, Minalji, correct, right?
But
If
at
you're
war
not,
zone, how can someone be happy or peaceful
sorry,
when
again,
there is a war?
when there is
There
a
is a
war.
war.
Okay, let's not even go that far, right? Let's give a more simple example. Let's say there is an impending big work that you have to do tomorrow morning at office. You have to prepare a presentation and you're not even ready. Yeah, and you have to work all night for that. And then let's say Alokji has, cooked a wonderful dinner for you. Okay. No, he does, right? Yeah, that's why I'm giving that example. Yeah, he's a good cook. Huh? So he has made a nice food, but you are in so much anxiety that even though there is nice food and you're tasting it, because you're in so much anxiety, because your mind is not peaceful, you're unable to enjoy, isn't it? That is the nature of the mind. You may be in the best place, you may be in Switzerland, you mean any of us, maybe in the best place, but suddenly somebody phones you in a very beautiful scenic place and tells you, Prabhu, Mataji, I'm calling from Malaysia just to let you know that your house in Malaysia has caught fire. But anyway, it's okay. You just enjoy your vacation nicely, and then when you come back, we will speak about it. Okay, so then, do you think you will enjoy the rest of your trekking on the Swiss Alps, having a good time? Okay? Your whole vacation is spoiled. Because Ashantasya Kuto Sukham, it is not just about having objects of pleasure. If your mind is not peaceful, you cannot enjoy them. So you see, in the material world, how the whole situation is so unsteady, so unstable. Because the reality is always difficulties, problems, and challenges will keep coming, either on the home front or on the office front, or there are 1 million fronts, right? Yeah. Continuously. If you remember, if you try to recollect at the end of your day, from morning to evening, what you are doing, you will see that at every point you are trying to solve some problem.
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah, every point, whether it's home, whether it's office, whether it's your relationships, whether it's whatever it is, it's always solve one. By the time you can solve one, there are 10 others which are knocking on the door. Okay, what about me? What about me? So anyway, without belaboring this point, I hope we all are very clear with respect to this point that Krishna is saying, no, you cannot. Nasti buddhir ayuktasya na cha ayuktasya bhavana na cha abhavayatah shantir ashantasya kuto sukham. Arjuna, there cannot be happiness without peace. That is why this is the path. You must become Krishna conscious. You must become yukta. You must develop your relationship with Krishna. Then you can actually be in a truly blissful condition. But for those who, instead of focusing on Krishna, they become distracted by focusing their mind on sense objects. Sometimes some people think, okay, maybe I will also focus on some sense objects. Maybe only one sense. Maybe not all five. I'll control four, but but one of them I will let loose. So Krishna is giving a warning in 2.67. He's saying, Arjun, the senses are very powerful. If you're not good at controlling them, then they will take away our intelligence. He gives a very beautiful example. So Krishna says, Indriyanam hi charatam yanmano anuvidhiyate tadasya harati pradnyam vayurnava ivam bhasai. Just like a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water. The boat is on the water, the strong wind, even if you want to go in this direction, you cannot, right? Even if you're trying to row, the wind is so powerful, it will blow you in another direction. Similarly, even one of the senses, which is roaming, on which the mind focuses, whether you're thinking about something which is related to the eyes, the nose, the touch, the taste, that can carry away the intelligence of a man if one is not careful. That is why the recommendation in the scriptures is, and Krishna has already mentioned this point earlier, Krishna is re-emphasizing this point. The yogi is a person who knows when to engage his senses and when to withdraw. At the same time, a yogi is a person who does not contemplate on the objects of the senses. Which doesn't mean that he will not enjoy, like what we discussed last time, the samosa or the gulab jamun. It's not that he's living a dry life. Yes. But he is careful to not anchor his consciousness on this, nor does he define his happiness or success based on whether these things are achieved or not. And in that way, if they come, he accepts, his senses are satisfied, his mind is satisfied. But if they don't come, he's not bothered. Why? Because he's continuously yukta, he's connected to a higher source of happiness. So these small, tiny drops of pleasure don't really matter much to him. Yeah. Hmm? So, like Ambarish Maharaj, that kind of an example is given. Tasmadyasya mahabaho nigrahitani sarvashah indriyani indriyarthebhyas tasya prajna pratishtita. That is why for a person to be one of steady intelligence, huh, it's essentially a person who has restrained his senses from going to their sense objects. Prabhupada would again and again emphasize that attachment to Krishna and detachment from matter. Again, attachment to Krishna, yukta, and detachment from matter, control of the senses, are two sides of the same coin. Okay, again, this is very important to understand. Attachment to matter, sorry. See, my consciousness is going towards matter. Attachment to Krishna and detachment from matter are two sides of the same coin. Which means that if you want to focus your mind on Krishna, you want to be attached to Krishna, you must control your senses. You cannot say, okay, I'll let my senses loose, but I will attach myself to Krishna. Not possible. Similarly, to be truly detached from the senses and to be able to truly control the senses, one must be attached to Krishna. In one of the previous verses, Krishna already explained that one will be truly detached from the senses only when one experiences the higher bliss of connection to Krishna. You remember? Anybody remembers that verse? Raso varjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Yeah, that's the second line of the verse. That even though there is some pleasure in the senses, by experiencing a higher pleasure, one is able to give up the lower pleasure. That is why a yogi is a person who does both. These are very important aspects of yoga. Any part of any type of yoga, it's not that this is relevant only to bhakti yoga. Any type of yoga must have these two limbs: attachment to the transcendental Lord and detachment from matter. Attachment to the Lord is cultivated in bhakti yoga through the process of sadhana bhakti, and detachment from matter is cultivated by controlling the senses. For us as bhakti yogis, how are the senses controlled? In two ways. One, by not engaging in sinful activities, the four regulative principles. And the second is by keeping the senses engaged in a positive way in the service of the Lord. Eating prasad, taking darshan of the deities, speaking about Krishna, hearing kirtan, so many ways. The more we engage our senses in a positive experience of spirituality, the more we will automatically be detached from the lower pleasures of the senses. That is why sadhakas need to be very careful. Then Krishna gives a very beautiful example. He says, Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagarti sanyami yasyam jagarti bhutani sa nisha pashyato munehe. Krishna compares a materialistic person and a devotee, a yogi. A devotee is also a yogi. He says, what is night, ratri, for all ordinary people, the materialistic people, is actually daytime or the time of awakening for those who are yogis, those who are self-controlled. And that which is waking time, daytime, for all the beings of this world, that is night time for the yogi, for the devotee. Okay, so that which is day for the yogi is night for the materialistic person, and that which is night for the yogi is day for the materialistic person. What does that mean? Does that mean that the yogi sleeps during the day and the materialistic person sleeps during the night? It's like a shift job. No, that's obviously not what it means. The sleeping, the day and night, is being mentioned from the perspective of being awake. So day means being awake, and night means asleep. Asleep meaning not being involved. So essentially, this verse, the Lord is saying very beautifully, He says, those things which excite and attract materialistic people, the materialistic people are awake to that. The yogi is asleep to it, which means he's not too bothered or interested. People are excited. Materialistic people are so excited. Wow, this, that, I want this, I want that, I'll be happy, I'll do this, do this, do this, do this. I'll be happy. The yogi says, oh, I know already. This seems like happiness, but this is only a source of misery. Dukkha yonaya evate adya vanta kaunteya nateshu ramate buddha. Those who are intelligent don't fall trap to all this, because these are sources of misery. Adyavanta, they have a beginning and they have an end. Dukkha yonaya evate. So they are asleep to it. They are not too interested. They are indifferent. But the activities that the yogi is excited about, chanting the holy names, reading Bhagavatam, discussing Bhagavad Gita, he is awake to that. But materialistic people is asleep to that. Oh, Kirtan, Katha, Damodar lamp offering. No. I have so much. I have 3 seasons of my Netflix series to see. So much work to do. I have no time for Damodar or Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. I have important things to catch up. But all that we catch up is still centered around eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Simply perpetuate the cycle of birth and death and continue to suffer, like what we discussed earlier. So the yogi and the materialistic are actually quite different. Externally, a yogi and a materialistic person may appear similar. Both may be working in the same company. But one is working in a spiritual consciousness and one is working in a materialistic consciousness. Then Lord Krishna says, see the yogi, even though he may be working in a job, even though he may be working in the world, a yogi doesn't mean he has to be in the forest or renounced or a sannyasi, even though he may be a CEO of a company, a director of the company, or active sales manager of a company, a big businessman, a soldier, doesn't matter. Irrespective of what his material situation is, if he is following the formula that has been described earlier, his consciousness can still remain fixed. And even though such a soul, of course, when he is in this world, he's interacting in this world, he's a family man, he's doing his profession, he's interacting with society, he has a body. So he does whatever is necessary to be done. And yes, the senses, the tongue will want something to eat, the belly also will want food. So all these desires of the senses are very natural because the senses will demand. But the beauty is, even though the senses will demand, the objects of the senses, for a yogi, when these desires come in, he has a very clear filter for those desires. First of all, those desires do not disturb him. Just like rivers, when they flow into an ocean, when a river flows into an ocean, does the ocean overflow? No, it does not. The ocean remains level, remains steady, no matter how much water flows in. So the consciousness of a yogi, because it is experiencing a higher pleasure, remains it's like an ocean. Even if the senses, so many desires come, the yogi doesn't become overwhelmed by those desires. His consciousness, his steady consciousness is able to handle all those desires coming in. And with his firm spiritual intelligence and his higher taste, he's able, with his spiritual discrimination, to judge which desire to entertain and which desire to push aside. And in this whole process, he doesn't allow his consciousness to be disturbed. He remains like an ocean. Only such a person can attain peace, Krishna is saying, and not the person who simply runs after every desire and whim and tries to fulfill it. Such a person actually is the most miserable person. A person who simply runs after fulfilling the whims of the mind and the senses. Sometimes people think if I simply fulfill all the desires of my mind and senses, I'll be happy. But actually, it is quite the opposite. It doesn't work like that. And we have discussed this multiple times, so I'm not going to belabor that point again. But I hope you are clear. If you are not fixed on the spiritual platform, if you're simply trying to satisfy material desires one after another, they will actually lead to misery and not actually happiness. So Krishna says very beautifully, he says, Apuryamanam achala pratishtham samudram apaha pravishanti yadvad tadvad kama yam pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti nakama kami. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires. These desires will continuously come, isn't it? When we are conscious and awake, isn't it? The mind is running, the senses are, it's all continuously inputs are coming. Give me this, give me this, give me this, give me this. Some smell comes from the kitchen. Ah, yeah, I want to eat. Something nice we can hear. Ah, I want to hear. Some nice smell. Ah, all the senses are continuously demanding, and one cannot stop that. A yogi is not a dumb wooden block that he feels nothing, senses nothing. No, no, that is not the idea of the yogi. He's saying, no, the yogi is in the world and is interacting with the world, but his consciousness is so full. Full with what? Full of a divine experience, full of divine peace and divine happiness. It is so full that doesn't have space for all these impurities of material desires and temptations. It's not bothered. It's already full to the brim, fully satisfied and happy. That is the secret of the peace of the yogi. He's not just a repressive soul who's forcefully saying, no, 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 I don't want. Now become yogi, I don't want to do this. Yes, maybe in the initial stages, we may have to go through some phase of a bit of a struggle with our senses. But as we evolve more and more, sense control becomes easier. Why? Because as the consciousness gets purified and as one develops more and more connection to the Lord, automatically one starts experiencing a higher pleasure and it becomes so much easy to naturally control the senses. Vihaya kamanyah sarvan pumans charati nispraha nirmamo nirahankara sashantim adigachati. So Krishna is summarizing who actually attains real peace. He doesn't chase after this kind of material sense enjoyments. He who lives free from such hankerings. And to be free from such hankerings, one must give up all sense of proprietorship. And for that, one must be free from the false ego, ahankara. One must be clear, I'm not this body, and all the things related to the body are not mine. The body as well as this whole world, everything comes from the Lord and belongs to the Lord and must be used in his service. And he acts accordingly with that consciousness, that conviction. such a person can attain real peace. So being desireless or free from desires here doesn't mean not have any desire. Again, not having any desire or zero desire is not even a practical end state. So here when we're talking about desire, we're talking about selfish materialistic desires for enjoyment. But desires are natural, because if somebody is conscious, obviously he's thinking, obviously there is some desire. If the desire is connected to spiritual things, those desires are not the cause of bondage. In fact, they are the cause of liberation. That is why there is no problem in them. A Krishna conscious person may have unlimited desires. Serve the Lord. And even within the realm of his job, his family, his society, all his activities and his duties, he can still perform by transforming those desires to spiritual desires. That is very much. That is the science. Yoga karmasu kaushalam. Krishna has explained. Yoga is the art of doing work in such a way that all work which would normally be material becomes spiritual. And truly one is able to effect that when one actually comes to the realization, Vasudeva Sarvam Iti. Or as the Ishopanishad says, Ishavasyam idam sarvam yat kinchit jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjita agrada kasya svidhanam. Please understand that everything you see around is all coming from the Lord. It is the property of the Lord. Ishavasyam idam sarvam. So why are you claiming it is yours? You are claiming this land is yours. I bought this. But Hare Baba, this land existed before you were born. And after you die and go away, the land will still continue. How you became the owner? You are just temporary, like in the speck of unlimited time, you happen to be occupying that. The land, you have no control over it. None of us are enjoyers or proprietors of anything in this world. We are fully subject to the laws of material nature. We are controlled. We are enjoyed. We are not the. So when one understands these principles clearly and acts on that basis, then one can actually come to the point of desirelessness in terms of not having materialistic desires. Then one can come to the state of fixed consciousness and peace. And the easiest way to cultivate this is through the process of sadhana bhakti. Two things like what we discussed. Cultivate attachment to Krishna and detachment from matter. Attachment to Krishna, what do we do? Chant Krishna's holy names every day. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We worship the beautiful form of the Lord. We offer him Naivedya, take prasad. We study the Gita and the Bhagavad. We associate with devotees. We render service to the Lord and his devotees. We observe festivals like Damodar festival, Dasera festival, Krishna Janmashtami, Gaur Purnima, Narsim Chaturdashi, all observe Ekadashi. So many ways in which we can cultivate our positive attachment to the Lord. As far as detachment is concerned, like what we discussed, avoid the four main sinful activities by following the regulative principles of freedom. And be careful not to absorb your consciousness or engage in materialistic activities which will take you away, your consciousness away, just like the example of the boat being swept away by the wind of material desire. That is the process. Krishna concludes this chapter, verse 72. Krishna says, he explains about this state of attainment. Esha Brahmi Sthiti Partha Nainam Prapya Vimuhyati Sthitva Syamanta Kalepi Brahma Nirvanam Richati. This way that I have described, Arjuna, this is the godly way. This is the spiritual path. Why? Because this is the only path after traversing and attaining the destination. A man is never bewildered. He always remains in a stable spiritual consciousness, which is peaceful and happy all the time, independent of what is happening outside. If one can cultivate and reach such a state, then even at the time of death, which is considered the biggest calamity, one can still remain fully composed and peaceful. And after one leaves this body, one can actually attain the spiritual realm, where one is permanently transferred to an environment which is eternally full of knowledge and bliss, without any inebrities, without any suffering, without birth, old age, disease, and death. Yad gatvan anivartante taddhamam paramam mama. So that is also described here as Brahma Nirvanam. Brahma Nirvanam means, Nirvan here is referring to full freedom from misery by attaining the transcendental abode of the Lord, Brahma Nirvanam. So Krishna is encouraging Arjuna, Arjun, this is what you should strive for. You were talking about fighting, you were talking about not wanting to fight, you are confused about your duty, you are thinking you will commit sin. I have already explained all these things to you, Arjun. I already explained to you summarily, first of all, you are not the body, you are the soul, so you cannot die, nor can you kill. The soul is eternal. I also explained to you that you are a Kshatriya, your duty is to fight. It is a wrong argument to say that you will get sin by fighting. In fact, you will get sin if you don't fight. Not only will you get sin if you don't fight, you will get a bad name. People will criticize you, and believe me, Arjun, you will not be able to take it. For you, it is better to fight, because if you fight, if you win, you enjoy the kingdom. If you die, you go to heaven, because that is the perfect duty for you, fighting a dharmic war. Like what I explained to you, Arjun, ultimately, if you are really keen on being totally untouched by any kind of suffering and sin, I explained to you the real path, topmost path, which is beyond considerations of Papa and Punya. I have explained to you that path. If a person follows this path, even while one is busy and engaged in this world, one can achieve a state of perfect consciousness. One can remain untouched by Papa and Punya of this world, untouched by Sukh and Dukh. One can always remain in a steady consciousness of happiness. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the second chapter. So for 5 minutes, if there are any questions, then I want to discuss something else. A little bit about the month of Damodar I want to discuss. Before that, if there is any question, for 5 minutes, I can take any questions on what we have discussed so far. So for those who are relatively new, yeah, some of these topics and concepts may be new, but what you can do is, if you have time, you can go to some of the previous classes. The recordings are available on the YouTube channel. So then you can catch up on some of the previous classes. Then you'll be able to understand some of these topics. Some of these topics and the points that are argued are very subtle and need a lot of reflection, deep introspection and deep reflection, chintan, manana, nididhyasan, to be able to absorb. And of course, with spiritual practice, the whole process becomes so much easier. Okay, so I hope
one question.
it's been fairly okay. Yeah, Meenal ji, yes.
in verse 1.40, Arjun asked
What is the
when
verse? Recite the
irreligion,
verse.
I will try. अर्धमार्भी भवात् कृष्ण प्रदुष्यन्ति
Pradashyanti
कुलस्त्रियः.
kulastriya. Okay. Yeah.
So he's saying when irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, women of the family become polluted, and from degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vishnu, comes unwanted progeny. How did Krishna address this?
No, Krishna is essentially addressing this. This was not a question by itself. This is one of the outcomes. If the people who are the elders of the family are annihilated. So what Krishna is saying is that uh, the ultimate solution to all problems is not just performance of material ritualistic duties, which are the Kula Dharma. Kula Dharma is one thing. But Krishna is encouraging Arjun to bring people to a higher level where one is not just performing Kula Dharma, but one is performing Sanatan Dharma. So the point is, if all the family members are nicely engaged and trained in following the Sanatan Dharma, because rituals and so many other duties, a lot of training may be needed by the elders. But as far as Sanatan Dharma is concerned, it is so much easier and simple, isn't it? Everybody can chant the holy names of the Lord. Everybody can offer obeisances. Man mana bhavat bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. Ame vaishyati satyam te pratijane priyashi. So when a person practices spiritual life, yukta, one becomes yukta, like what Krishna has explained here. When that is done properly, then even if the Kula Dharma happens to be uh, compromised because of certain material factors, even then the soul doesn't get degraded because the soul has taken shelter of a higher dharma, which is Sanatana Dharma. So that is how
And
Krishna actually glorifies Sanatana Dharma above Kula Dharma.
so Krishna, Arjuna said, okay, if I fight, there will be destruction and uh, tradition will vanquish and it will involve irreligion, and further saying it will degrade the womanhood because he was saying I should not fight. This will happen.
Yes, he says
And
no. He says if I fight, then if I fight and the war happens, then the war will lead to the killing of the elders, and the elders die, then the Kula Dharma will not be properly passed down because there are so many technicalities, training, and other things which are involved in the Kula Dharma. Krishna is saying Sanatan Dharma is even higher. If
which
everybody
is fighting,
simply, yeah, the Sanatan Dharma
which
is
is
the Dharma. Sanatan Dharma is the Dharma of the soul, which is to love God and serve God. Which one can do simply by remembering God. So Kula Dharma and Varnashram Dharma are supporting aspects at a bodily level. They support spiritual life. But the essence of spiritual life is Sanatan Dharma, which is the essential nature of the soul. So it is important that the Sanatan Dharma is propagated everywhere extensively. Because when Sanatan Dharma is practiced, even if material Dharma is compromised, even then the soul is not lost. That's why Krishna says, "Na swalpam api asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat." Even little bit you practice Sanatan Dharma, even in the process there is neglect of material dharma. Not that that is to be done, but even if that were to be the case, even then that is a better situation than simply performing Kula Dharma perfectly but not performing Sanatan Dharma. You understand? Because material dharma will only give material results. If you want spiritual results, you must perform Sanatan Dharma. Material Dharma will help us achieve a stable situation materially, but by itself it will not give us spiritual elevation. It will create a conducive environment for spiritual elevation, but one must take shelter of the spiritual process for spiritual elevation. One must become yukta. That's why Krishna tells Arjun, this is not just about performing your duty properly. It is about performing your duty for a spiritual purpose, not just for a material purpose. So fight, but don't fight for yourself. Fight for me. Okay. So,
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
yes, Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Just I want to add, the same question was raised sometime before by Veena-ji, and the answer, in addition to this, you were saying, Prabhuji, since Yudhishthir is going to be the king, the Dharmic king, then the Dharma will be established.
Yeah.
So no need to worry about this point.
Yeah. So that's another point also, that eventually the outcome of this whole battle, if Arjuna wins, is going to be auspicious anyways. And that is why, especially in Kali Yuga, given that it's so difficult, actually Kula Dharma for most of us has actually practically vanished. Yes, Meenalji is from Mishra family. So Mishra families are traditional Brahmins, Pandits, right? I'm also from a family of Brahmins, Pandits. For many generations, nobody has been a Pandit or Brahman in our family, in the true sense of the term. So where is the Kula Dharma? Practically, Kula Dharma has disappeared. That is true for all of us, isn't it? So in Kali Yuga, yes, it's good. Kula Dharma is there, and whatever extent it remains, if we practice, that is good. We are not against that. But the point is, what is more important, since this is such an emergency and dire situation, what is more important is that we focus on the transcendental Dharma. And that is why Prabhupada emphasized the principle of Daivi Varnashram rather than the traditional Varnashram. Because Kali Yuga is a very difficult situation. Anyway, that's a very detailed topic. We will discuss some of these aspects as we progress with the Gita.
Prabhuji, one more question, if I may ask.
Yeah.
It's written here, according to Chanakya Pandit, women are generally not very intelligent.
Yeah, in bracket it is written, Meenal is very intelligent. So here intelligence is not just about intelligence in the way we see it. The way Chanakya Pandit is mentioning is that generally, this is again, it is not a rule, but it is more a tendency of a particular category. It may or may not apply to everybody. So generally, a more objective, analytical mind, typically as a class, men are a bit more dispassionate and a bit more objective. Men generally tend, like they say, men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Women generally tend to think more from the heart. Now, of course, some of you may or may not agree with that, but anyway, that's a big debate. But generally, that is true, and generally, it's not that either one by itself is good or bad, but the tendency is that without spiritual knowledge, to think by the heart is more dangerous than thinking through the brain. If one has spiritual knowledge, it doesn't matter. If one has spiritual knowledge, actually, the woman is even in a better position, because then she knows where to give the heart to. The Man just remains on the intellectual platform, but the woman gives her heart to Krishna. Yeah. So obviously, all of you are already much more intelligent than all other men in this world because you are in the Bhagavad Gita class. That is real intelligence. So this is about traditionally, ladies were also not much inclined towards study and analytical thinking and knowledge and all that. They're more generally more simple and more prone follow the inclinations of the heart. And in that sense, with that kind of a disposition, spiritual advancement becomes more difficult. But Prabhupada was very clear on this topic. Prabhupada would always say that all my lady students are very intelligent. Because what is intelligence ultimately? According to the Gita, Krishna says, Bahunam Janmana Mante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate. After many, many lifetimes, when one person actually becomes intelligent and knowledgeable, what does he do? He takes shelter of me. Yeah. So what is Krishna saying? Krishna saying is one who is a devotee is intelligent. Sei bada chatur. Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says. Yehi Krishna bhaje sei bada chatur. He who worships Krishna is extremely intelligent. So for us, that is the definition of intelligence. Yeah. Our definition of intelligence is he who has come to the right conclusion that I have to take shelter of Krishna. That is the intelligence. And that is what is desired. So for that intelligence, body is not a consideration. Whether one is male or female doesn't make any difference. For Sanatana Dharma, it doesn't make any difference. In fact, our general observation is ladies are generally, when they get the right understanding, they can actually fix their heart on the Lord even more stronger than the men. In fact, in many places we see there are more ladies who are devotees than men. We are not too concerned about that. Okay, anyway, we don't have much time, so I'm just going to make a couple of quick announcements, and after that, if there are further questions, we can discuss. So, important thing. So now, just completed Navratri and Dasera. So now the upcoming festival is actually the beautiful, auspicious month of Kartik, Damodar, which is one of the most auspicious months in the year. And in this month is especially dear to Krishna, and more so to Srimati Radharani, who is Krishna's internal energy. This is said to be the month which gives bhakti. It is the month of bhakti. And in this month, which begins from this Sunday onwards, 31st of October onwards. Is it 31st? Sorry. Sunday is what day?
I think it's first, Prabhuji.
No, 31st is
Saturday.
31st is Saturday. So first, yeah, sorry, first. Yeah, you're right. Sunday, it starts from Sunday onwards. So 31st is Sharad Purnima. Yeah, that Saturday. So we will be having our class on Saturday. Very auspicious day. It's the day before Damodar month. Anyway, this month is special for various reasons. And from 1st onwards, again, the month of Damodar is there. Actually, I was told that technically the Damodar month begins towards the evening of 31st. But anyway, that's a more of a Tithi calculation. But it is said that in the scriptures that this month is very auspicious, that whatever spiritual activities one performs, one gets at least 100 times more benefit than any other months. So you attend one Bhagavad Gita class, you get the credit of attending 100 Bhagavad Gita classes. Chant one round, you get the credit of chanting 100. You offer one lamp to the Lord, you get the credit of offering 100. You do one donation, get 100 donation benefit, and so on and so forth. So any austerity, any seva done in this month extra one gets benefit. So that is why devotees are encouraged to increase their devotional service as far as possible, and especially recommended in this month is to worship the form of the Lord, the form which is known as Lord Damodara, the Lord who was tied around the waist. I'm not going to be telling the pastime of Damodar today. What we will do is we'll use Saturday for that. That is okay. So we will build up the mood for Damodar on Saturday, and then we'll discuss into more detail so that you all learn the pastime and then you can tell it to everybody else. Of course, you don't have to wait for that. All the pastime and everything is available online, but nonetheless, we can refresh and absorb ourselves in that mood on this Saturday class. So we will discuss more in detail about that. But I just want to emphasize on one thing today, since we are already just 10 p.m. now. I want to let you know that in Malaysia, we are making an attempt to establish a new Malaysian world record. Yeah. Malaysian world record means world record in Malaysia. So there is some concept of Malaysian Book of Records. That is, it's like there's a Guinness Book of Records. There's also a Malaysian Book of Records. So in that, ISKCON is trying to establish a record of maximum number of lambs offered to Lord Damodar simultaneously and online. So that is the feat that is going to be attempted. And I was speaking to the General Secretary of ISKCON Malaysia today, and he was also personally asking me, actually not today, he was asking me day before yesterday, that Gaurchandra Prabhu, can you also help and support so that all your students and their families and everybody else can also participate in this activity. And in that way, of course, they also get benefit, and also we are able to form this record for the pleasure of the Lord, for the glorification of the Lord and his devotees. Of course, we are not excited in terms of material award for ourselves. But that becomes something which attracts the mind of others. So that is the attempt going to be made. So I have put a couple of posts on this topic actually in terms of what day, what time. So if I think in Malaysia, I think the time is 7:45 if I'm not wrong. I don't have it open here, but if anybody has the WhatsApp.
It's 30 p.m. I think.
7:45.
7:45 it says. Yeah. So we can all log in on, this is on Sunday, 1st of November. So it's very, very simple. Very, very simple. So I just want to explain to you what is going to be done. So all of you, I please request, this is my personal request to all of you, and along with your family, not just you, all of you should log in. There's a Zoom. There are 3 Zoom IDs. You can choose any one of them. You log in. Of course, put your video on, and keep a lamp with a ghee wick ready, and they will be showing on Zoom picture of Lord Damodar, and you can light your lamp, and then everybody will be singing together. You can offer the lamp to Lord Damodar. So it will not be a very long program, it will be a short program, and His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj will be leading it. So it will be very wonderful. So it's very nice, everybody connected across the world from various places. Of course, most of the devotees will be connecting from Malaysia, but this is open for devotees all around the world. There's no restriction geographically. So I've also requested some devotees from Singapore also to connect and help us. Gaur Bhavani Mataji, Nam Sankirtan Pro will be helping to circulate the message in the Singapore congregation. Of course, Malaysia ISKCON congregation, already devotees are doing that. So here amongst our students, we can easily have a few hundred individuals doing this. So the request is 2 things. One is the count, obviously, because this is a record, we have to consider how to maximize the count also. So the count will be based on how many individual connections are happening to Zoom. Yeah. So again, you don't need a paid Zoom account or anything. You just have to connect. There'll be an ID. Just have to key in the ID of the meeting ID into Zoom or click the link, and you can get in, no password, nothing, very simple. Yeah. So the request is, in your home, please connect from each of the devices, which means each of the person from the home connects from his own device or laptop. Yeah. So which means one person, the husband connects from probably his office laptop, wife connects from her phone, the children connect from their respective phones. And of course, each of them has their own lamp in their hand, and they light and then they offer from their own device. Okay, so that's how it will be. So the details of how the program will be conducted, of course, we'll go through, but essentially they will give these basic instructions and then sing Damodar Ashtaka and offer the lamp. So it will not be a very long program. So that's all, nothing you have to do. The only thing is probably half an hour you have to spend and bring a lamp. And then offer it. That's all. So it's very simple. So please participate. So this is also a nice devotional offering because the Society of Devotees is trying to do this wonderful service and offering. So we encourage all of you. Please encourage your family members, all your family members to participate. And please feel free to extend this opportunity to everyone. It's also the first day of Damodar. For example, Meenal ji can spread this in our India also. Yeah, all your
Sure,
friends,
Babuji.
also your Mataji's group, and so on and so forth, right? In your respective, so we can have in thousands. So in that way, whoever you introduce and they offer, of course, you get commission. How much commission? Commission is not counted in ringgits. Commission is counted in the currency of Krishna Bhakti, because Krishna will give us the commission. Ya idam paramam guhyam mad bhakteshu vidasyati bhakti maya param kritva mamai vaishyati samsaya. Whoever helps others to develop their connection with me, they are guaranteed to develop devotion for me. Krishna says in the 18th chapter. Without doubt, they will attain me. So that's a very great service. So please, all of you, very enthusiastically participate. His Holiness Jayapataka Maharaj is leading it, so it's even more auspicious. It's not just us doing. So we are led by a very great devotee. So we can all, do this together. So I hope you all can join, please. Can? Shalini ji?
Yes, Prabhuji. I will get
Yes,
ready.
Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Sure,
Yeah,
Prabhuji,
please.
sure.
Yeah. All your family members, please gather them and please help to make this successful. Yeah, and please spread the word around also. So any questions on this, what we have discussed?
To wear a nice dress.
Yeah, don't be pressured by all these things. Yeah. At Singtel, I found a very simple way what to do if you're not wearing a nice dress. All you have to do is adjust your camera in such a way that only your face is seen. Yeah, your
Everybody's
face
going to
and your
focus
hair.
on Damodarji.
Yes, correct. No, some people are interested in also other things. Yeah. But of course, see, when we dress nicely, when we go to temple, we are not dressing nicely to show our sari to other people. We dress nicely to please the Lord. Yeah, that is the devotee's consciousness. So in the festival, when we dress nice, we are dressing nice for the pleasure of the Lord. That is the devotee's consciousness. So dressing nicely is not a problem. So some people say, oh, you're a devotee, why you're dressing nicely? Dressing nicely is not the problem. Problem is, rather the question is, for whom are you dressing nicely?
Dressing nicely, that's
Yeah. Are we dressing nicely just to make others envious? Oh, I have such a nice dress, you don't have. Or are we dressing nicely to look nice for the pleasure of the Lord and the devotees and to make the festival more festive and happy for everyone? So every activity, when it is performed, can be performed in a spiritual way. And that is why the path of bhakti is so nice and so enriching and so broad that one can find so much fulfillment in all ways and so much expression, whether it is good food, whether it is music, whether it is dance, whether it's nice clothes. All these activities can be nicely connected to the Lord. And in that way, both the senses are pleased and the soul is pleased. So that is the beauty of the process of Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So that is why we have to understand this properly. And when we understand it, we will see that it's very wonderful. Yeah. So Vasu, please join also. I saw you are connected. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Nice to see you. Yeah. So everyone else, Amit is from Nasik. Amit, please join and spread the word around also.
Sure, Prabhuji.
Yeah. And Divya Gaurangi Mataji, if possible for you. I don't know whether it will be too early or not. But you can. And whoever else, your connection, I think she's probably disconnected. Okay, so the same goes for each and every one. So I'm assuming I'm not going to ask each person individually. So I'm assuming you're all participating. Any questions, you can ping me or ask me. But this is very simple request. Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Any questions on either this topic or what we have discussed earlier?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah. Praneshwari Mataji.
Prabhu, can you please explain on the verse 2.69 again about the awakening of the self-control and the introspective stage? Actually, what does this thing mean? And refers to whom?
Okay. Okay. So this is comparing the yogi / devotee to a materialistic person. So what Krishna is saying is he's comparing, he's essentially saying day for the sage is night for the materialistic person, and night for the sage is the day for the materialistic person. Yeah, I mean, that's what the verse externally says. But what the Lord is trying to mean or indicate is when he says day, it means awake to some activity, awake to certain kinds of activities, and night means asleep to certain kinds of activities. You're with me so far? Because day is when we engage and night is when we are idle, correct?
Yeah.
So essentially, day for the yogi is night for the bhogi. Yeah, there's a yogi and there's a bhogi. They are opposite. So day for the yogi is night for the bhogi means the yogi is for certain activities very active, but for the same activities the bhogi is asleep. He's not interested. Okay, but there are certain activities where the bhogi is active. It is his daytime. But those activities, the yogi is asleep. For him, it is nighttime. He's not interested. Okay, so day and night is about what they are awake to and what they are asleep to, which means, in very simple words, what they are interested in and what they are not interested in. Okay, so the simple translation without any analogy would be those activities which are attractive and interesting for the yogi are uninteresting and or have no interest for the materialistic person. And those activities which are very attractive for the materialistic person, the yogi is indifferent to those activities. Yeah.
Okay,
And why
Prabhu.
that is the case? And why that is the case? Because the yogi knows materialistic activities are a source of suffering and spiritual activities are the source of bliss. But a materialistic person is totally unaware of the spiritual side and is still trapped thinking that material activities are all in all. That is why for him, material activities are full daytime, spiritual activities is nighttime.
Okay, Prabhu. Thanks.
Understood, huh?
Yeah, now it's clear.
Okay, good. Okay, anything else? Okay, Upendra Prabhu, Dandavats, you would like to say something, add something? So has he disconnected? Or perhaps he has. He was here a few minutes ago. Never mind. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so thank you very much. So we will connect on Saturday. So please remember, so those who are, so one is of course we are observing the festival on 1st onwards, the month of Damodar. So those who are already familiar, I'm assuming you all have a picture of Damodar in your home. So this is also a time to get ready, have your lamps, have your wicks ready, have your Damodar picture out. from wherever you have stored it, clean it up, make some space on your altar, keep it nicely. You can set everything up Saturday onwards. So you can start on Sharad Purnima, Saturday evening. It's also a very nice day. Sharad Purnima is the day of the Ras Leela. So we'll discuss a bit about that on Saturday as well. We'll discuss something about Sharad Purnima, and then we'll discuss also something about Damodar's pastime.
Prabhuji, why only ghee lamp? Why ghee?
Why ghee? Because for Krishna we use the best ingredients. So ghee is made from cow's milk. Ghee is considered the most auspicious. It creates the best, and when ghee is lit, it's a very sattvic environment, a very divine environment everywhere around.
It should use every day.
Yes, oil has come only of late.
Because it's cheap.
Yeah, at one time when Krishna would play the gopis, they would play with each other by throwing yogurt and butter at each other. And that much milk and butter was in India. It is said even at the time of India's independence, 1947, the ratio of human beings to cows in India was 1:5. For every human being in India, there were 5 cows. That was the population of cows in India. So you can imagine how much milk, yogurt, ghee, and everything was. Of course, ghee has a lot of other benefits. I'm not going to do that in detail, but ghee is used for sacrifice, for performance of yajna, because through that offering of ghee into the sacrificial fire, that also produces a particular, of course, it's a medium to offer the oblations and to make offerings to the devatas and the Lord, but also from a material perspective, it purifies the environment surrounding. Ghee lamp has a very powerful soothing effect, a very sattvic effect wherever it is lighted. So if we can, I think all of us can afford ghee just for lighting a lamp. Some people think that they cannot afford. It's okay. You don't have to put lot of ghee as long as the wick is dipped in ghee and the wick is lighting. Even if it remains lighted for a few minutes, that is okay. It's not that it has to be a big lamp with a lot of ghee. So those who offer the ghee wicks every day, all you have to do is make a lot of wicks, keep them dipped in ghee, then take out one wick, put it in the lamp. You don't have to fill each and every diya with a lot of ghee, not necessary. The wick is dipped in ghee, that's enough. It will burn for a few minutes, that is enough. Of course, when we keep a Niranjan in front of the Lord, yes, at that time we will feel, because we want the lamp to go on for a long time. But when we are doing just an offering for Damodar Ashtak, we don't have to do that necessarily. There's no harm, but not necessarily. Okay. So please prepare like that. For those who do not have right now, because we are in a COVID period, we don't have Damodar kits to give away. So what you can do is you can go online. And I'll probably share a few links over the next couple of days on Damodar Ashtak and a few other things, so that those who are relatively new will be more familiar with what needs to be done. And we will go through that whole process on a bit more discussion around that on Saturday as well. Yeah. But the others, the picture of Lord Damodar, you can download and print and keep it in your altar for this month. And it's very simple. The process is very simple. Just offering a ghee lamp 7 times around the picture of Lord Damodar in a clockwise fashion every day, at least once a day. Best is if one can do twice a day. And good if you can sing Damodar Ashtaka prayer. That is very highly recommended from the Padma Puran. It's very pleasing to the Lord. If you cannot sing, you can just play it in the background. Yeah. At least offer the lamp. The minimum is just takes 10 seconds, 7 times. That's all. That's all it takes. And just for that small lamp offering, the scriptures say one gets tremendous benefit. So that's the Lord's very special offer. Okay, so I'll encourage all of you to do that and encourage others to do that as well. Yeah, okay. So thank you all very much. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. So we will start with chapter 3 following week. Yeah, and of course for the period of Damodar month, we will also try to sing the Damodar Ashtaka. Even within our respective classes, we'll try to do a lamp offering. See how to manage that. Probably each one of you can host. Figure that out how to do that. Okay. So thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.